Hey guys, Dan here with your TV news and reviews for this week. Welcome to the show. We've got a lot of ground to cover because we're in the 1 week break between the Apple TV Plus Is It Worth It? And next week we'll be doing the Disney Plus Is It Worth It? Reviewing all the Disney Plus shows. So this week, we sort of are going to run through a bunch of news items I thought were interesting and 6 different reviews from all manner of areas. We've got an HBO like mini series type of thing. We've got an action show on USA. We've got a couple of shows on Hulu. We've got an Amazon Prime show, and as well a Netflix show. So something from all over the place, which we'll get to all of that. Nothing like major, just some things that I thought were interesting sounding, or, getting a little bit of a buzz. But, I think everybody's sort of shying away from releasing stuff this week because Disney Plus is about to premiere. So this is stuff sort of from the last, 2 or 3 weeks that I just haven't caught up on yet, because we were doing the Apple TV stuff. So news, though, let's get to that. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about that I thought was interesting. So first up, as I usually start lately, is the full season pickups and then also cancellations. So we've gotten a few full season pickups, mostly from comedies. Superstore has topped off their order, so they're going to have another 22 episode season, which was the same as the last couple years. Interesting because it's really the only Thursday night show on NBC that gets a full 20 plus episode season. Will and Grace is close. I think there's 18 Will and Graces this season, but Sunnyside already canceled and moved to the NBC platform. But Good Place only gets 13. Brooklyn Nine-Nine, I think it does get more than 13, but not a full 22. And then, what's the other one? Perfect Harmony is set for just a 13-episode season. So, Superstore got a full season pickup. Also, on ABC, Bless This Mess, which I've seen the first full season of. I haven't seen any of Season 2 yet, but that's Dak Shepard and Lake Bell. Love those guys. Interesting show. I mean, it's not that different from Green Acres in some aspects, but it's a funny show, and both very likable actors, so I'm glad that got a full season pickup. And then also American Housewife, which I don't really watch. I'm sure it's fine. I don't know. There's just so many shows to watch. I gave it a couple episodes back when it first premiered. I think it's in its 4th season now. It's been on for longer than I thought it was, but so those all have gotten full season pickups. Now for the cancellations, these are a little bit sad for me. 2 shows that I have enjoyed. The first is BH 90210. It was sort of poised as a limited run series with just those 6 episodes, but I think there was always a theory that, hey, if this performs well, we'll pick it up for years to come. And apparently it was relatively cheap for Fox. The actors only got about $70,000 an episode, and then Jenny Garth and Tori Spelling got a little more because they were producers. But other than that, the actors weren't that expensive, and then getting the rights, from CBS wasn't that expensive either. So I guess the ratings just weren't there. I know it started out very, very strong, was one of the hottest shows of the summer, and then as the weeks went on, I think people sort of started tuning out a lot more, not really maybe understanding the concept. But I reviewed the show on, I think, my second TV news and reviews. I watched the whole thing. It was the week that it was over, so I watched all 6 episodes. I really enjoyed it. I thought they did a good job with it. They sort of turned the reboot thing on its head. So I am sad to see that will not be getting a second season. And then the other one is Fresh Off the Boat, which is wrapping up its 6th season, which I believe will only have 15 episodes in it. And we talked a couple weeks ago about how there's going to be a possible spin-off of that from, I think it was an Indian American family that went to school with Eddie, like one of the kids did. And so that will be sort of a backdoor pilot of this last season, and then ABC will decide from there whether or not to spin it off into a series. So we'll see what happens there. But, no real surprise. it's its sixth year. It's getting a little bit long in the tooth. And then Constance Wu had that big, Twitter blow up when the series got renewed for the current season, and she was all mad because it meant she couldn't do some other project she was really passionate about. So, and then she's blowing up on the big screen anyway because she's got Crazy Rich Asians and Hustlers. So, I'm not really shocked, but it is kind of a bummer because it is a show that I watch and really enjoy. So, that's going to join Modern Family as ending this season as well. So, ABC will have a couple of really big, comedy holes to fill next year on the slate. So, just wanted to get that out of the way, let you know about that. Okay, so up next, I want to talk about Norman Lear. This dude is in his late 70s. He is 97 years old, now the oldest ever Emmy winner, winning an Emmy for the live staging that him and Jimmy Kimmel put on earlier this year for All in the Family and The Jeffersons. And they had announced shortly after that, after it was so well received, that they would be doing at least 2 more of these. And now we have information and a date for the next one. It's going to be All in the Family again, and then Good Times. And this is going to air December 18th, so I think we can expect that there will be 2 Christmas episodes. In fact, I think the article I read said for sure, yes, All in the Family will have a Christmas episode. Good Times, they don't know what they're going to do yet. And they also haven't said whether or not the cast for the All in the Family portion will be the same as it was, which I thought was great casting. It was Woody Harrelson as Archie, Marissa Tomei as Edith, and then Ike Barinholtz and Kimmy Schmidt, what's her name, Ellie Kemper, as Gloria and Meathead. I would love it if the casting was the same for that, but who knows? I mean, I think it would be silly to sort of veer away from that because it was so well received, but you never know. Maybe they want to give it, another fresh take. And then Good Times, it's anybody's guess who they'll get for that. I saw the All in the Family Jeffersons mashup they did earlier this year, and I loved it. I thought it was so great. And it's so very interesting that they didn't, change any of the dialogue as proof that, Norman Lear wrote these shows 40 years ago and they still resonate today. And they really did. I mean, they were funny, even topical, which is so weird for a kind of politically charged show to still be relevant 40 years later. I mean, it shows the magnitude of Norman Lear. I would love to see them do like a Maude or, Sanford and Son wasn't Norman Lear's, but it was in that same era and with the same type of status. Obviously, I guess they wouldn't do that for the Norman Lear one night only bit, but Maude I would love to see. Good Times I think is a great suggestion. I've always enjoyed that show as well. I haven't watched it in probably a good 15 years, but I used to love it when I was a kid, and watched it again, in my young adulthood when it came on, probably TV Land or something, maybe Nick at, I think it was already off Nick at Night by the time I watched it in my adult years, but yeah, I would love to see what they do with the Good Times characters. I would imagine it would be an episode where both the parents are still there, because of course John Amos's character died halfway through the series, because the actor, wanted to leave. But maybe we'll have something similar to having Marla Gibbs show up in The Jeffersons, which was so great, because there's a fair amount of Good Times people still alive. John Amos is still alive. He'll be in Coming to America too next year. Esther Roll, of course, has passed on, but I think all of the kids are alive. So, it would be really cool to maybe have one of them show up. But even if not, I love this concept. The whole live TV thing is really, hot right now because it's one way that a network can get ratings with something buzzworthy and hey, did you see that? Now, they did Little Mermaid live this past week. I didn't catch it, but they did something very unique with it, which was it wasn't all live as actors like a lot of or maybe all of the other ones have been. They've done, and not just ABC, but Fox and NBC have done it too. But they've done Peter Pan and Hairspray and Grease, and I forget all of them. There've been quite a few. I think Rocky Horror maybe they did. I heard that was not good though. But so they sort of played the movie alongside the actors doing the stuff, and I saw some footage of it. It looked a little corny. It did not get a great audience response, but it barely matters when the ratings are so high. It's almost like it doesn't necessarily have to be good. You just have to get eyeballs on it. And so that's what happened. I heard it wasn't very good, but that the ratings were huge for it. So I would love to see them do more of this kind of live thing where they're taking old sitcoms and maybe reimagining them or whatever. Whether that's with Norman Lear shows or otherwise. I think it's a cool concept. I loved the casting choices, and I wasn't sure at first. Like when I heard Woody Harrelson for Archie, I was like, I love Woody Harrelson, but I don't know. And it was great. It was like flawless, and then Jamie Foxx doing George Jefferson, like that was great. Wanda Sykes doing Wheezy was decent. So yeah, a lot of cool stuff. Hopefully they have other good casting choices for Good Times. So we'll look for that in December. All right. Up next, I want to talk about this very interesting thing, and I don't even know exactly what the story is with it. And I even listened to a podcast about it, and the people on the podcast didn't quite know either. But essentially, with the whole Disney-Fox merger thing, and Disney now owns Hulu and all of this stuff, they are going to start this FX on Hulu thing. And I'm not positive if it's going to be its own channel, its own subscription within the Hulu subscription. I don't know. But what I know is 4 shows that the FX network has been working on for over a year to bring to their channel are now going to be going straight to Hulu. And these are some like high-profile projects. I had not heard of all of them, but I knew of some of them. So Mrs. America, starring Cate Blanchett, huge star, that's going to be big. A Teacher, starring Kate Mara and Nick Robinson. Jeff Bridges is coming to television, or streaming or whatever, with a drama called The Old Man, and then this other show called Devs. And they were all programmed to be on FX, not Fox, but FX or FXX. I guess they sort of interchange them as they see fit. But now they're going to go straight to Hulu on this new FX on Hulu thing. And even the podcast person I listened to didn't know whether to call it a channel or not. I don't think it's a separate channel, but it's going to be sort of like the subscription. Like if you have Hulu, you can subscribe then to also Showtime through Hulu, and you can see their shows. But I don't think that's any original content. I think that's just all, hey, the shows that are already on Showtime, you can see them now on Hulu with your subscription. So, I don't know. But with that is going to be a list of over 40 FX original shows over the years that will be on this FX on Hulu thing. And it's going to include things going back to, like, towards the beginning of FX. The Riches, for example, like with Eddie Izzard, that was on, I don't know, 15 plus years ago. All the way up to some of the current stuff. But obviously, like Always Sunny, You're the Worst, a lot of that kind of stuff. The Verdon Fosse, the sort of mini-series stuff they've been doing lately. All the seasons of American Horror Story. So, it's definitely intriguing. I think there's, we keep talking here on this show about all the different streaming services and stuff. And next week, we're going to be doing the Disney Plus Is It Worth It show. And last week we did the Apple Plus one. And so obviously Disney is not going to run a lot of their, more mature content on their channel. Disney Plus is going to be more or less for families, for kids, that kind of thing. But of course, now that they own Fox and Disney has their own sort of adult library. They own properties like Pretty Woman, that was even before the Fox merger. Or The Proposal with Ryan Reynolds and Sandra Bullock, that kind of thing. So where are they going to put those? Well, they put them on Hulu, I guess. So here now is an entire other subsection, I guess, of Hulu. There's a few, notable things missing from here. Like Nip Tuck was not on the list. The American Crime Story O.J. Simpson thing was not on the list. So, whether they have other homes right now that are exclusive, I don't know. But I feel like FX or Hulu rather, is typically the place to go for FX shows anyway. Although not all, because some are on Netflix. Like I think You're the Worst was on Netflix. I watched it when it was on TV, but I think it's Netflix. But then Always Sunny was on Netflix for a while, and now it's on Hulu. So, they're all sort of interchanging different shows, but this, I guess, will be, the FX channel. But it's interesting to me that they're setting up 4 brand new shows that aren't even going to go to cable and aren't even really going to go to Hulu proper. It's going to go to this other thing that you will likely have to pay extra for, FX on Hulu. So I don't know. I feel like Disney is sort of, I don't know, sort of counting their chickens before they hatch type of thing. Like, they're already expecting all these people to pay for Disney Plus, which I think will be a big success, but then they expect people to also pay for FX on Hulu as its own thing. And I don't know. But I can't imagine they're just going to throw all these things on Hulu as Hulu properties. It seems to me, from what I understand, that this is going to be its own separate entity through Hulu. I don't know. I was a cable cord cutter years ago, so for me, it's like, even if I add in all the streaming services I pay for or plan on paying for, I think it would still be cheaper than all the cable that I was doing, because it was like, even without HBO and Showtime and that kind of thing, I think I was paying like $80 a month or something for cable, and it was like ridiculous, because I already had Hulu and Netflix and a wall of DVDs, and this is like 1/6 of my collection. So it's like, there was no point for me to pay all that much. So even with all the streaming stuff, but it's like, am I gonna really pay for now FX on Hulu to get FX's library? And I don't know. I love this idea that we can have all of these shows at our fingertips. I do love that. It's sort of what I would dream about, like, growing up. It's so stupid, but like, I would watch Back to the Future 2 and see how Marty McFly would just pull up his TV and say, like, oh, play such and such a show, or I forget, it might have been a football game or something on the movie, but I just thought to myself, oh, that would be so cool if I could just say, like, oh, pull up, Gunsmoke season 5, whatever, just any random show, and boom, it would be there. And we're sort of getting into that era. A lot of shows obviously are not really in that mix, mostly pre-2000, I would say. But more or less, most shows that were on the air after 2000, you can find somewhere, whether it's CBS All Access or Hulu or Netflix or on DVD or whatever. So I do love that, but FX does have a lot of good shows, but I don't know that I want to pay for something inside now Hulu, rather than just putting them up on Hulu. But I think it's interesting that Jeff Bridges is doing a drama that's going straight to some subsection of Hulu now, instead of on to television. It's very odd. And Cate Blanchett as well. So, some big name shows. We'll see, what happens with that. It's interesting. The next thing I want to touch on is a real quick one. It is my girl, Vanna White. She's going to be hosting Wheel of Fortune for an undetermined amount of time, because Pat Sajak had some surgery, and he's fine, everything's good, but he is going to be currently out of commission. And so Vanna taped an entire week's worth of episodes that are going to start airing December 9th. And I didn't realize this, but apparently she did this once before, just for one show, I think, back in 1996, when Pat Sajak had laryngitis. But, I love Vanna White. I love Wheel of Fortune. Not a wheel watcher, as they say, but, but it's something that I certainly have always liked. I used to watch it, growing up a lot, and I'll still turn it on sometimes, because I do have, even though I don't have cable, I still do have an antenna, so I have, the station here that runs both Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy, which is a CBS affiliate. Um, and I love Vanna White, so I am curious. I haven't watched Wheel in probably a year. Um, that's maybe not true. I think maybe it's been on in the gym a couple times when I've been there. But um, I am very curious to see how Vanna does as host. I bet she's great. We don't really get to hear from her a lot. They do sort of the two-hander at the end of the episode where her and Pat are just kind of talking about whatever for like 45 seconds while the credits are rolling. So it'll be interesting to see. But I do wonder who's then going to turn the letters, or I mean, it's all computerized now anyway, but like they still have Vanna there sort of for comfort's sake, she's part of the show. So I don't know if she's the host. Do they just go, with the computer turning the letters automatically? I don't know, but it'll be interesting. I'll definitely be watching. Not much to report on that. I just thought it was interesting that it was happening because I hadn't heard about that till today. And then the last thing I want to talk about is our big feature this week in reboots. Now, last week we didn't do news because it was all about Apple TV, so I actually have 4 reboots to tell you about. And I'm going to go in sort of order of interest to me, because 3 of these 4 shows I've never really seen the originals of. But the one that I'm most intrigued by is Weeds. So Weeds, I actually never finished, but I did watch the first few seasons several times. And always thought it was a very good show. So I missed, like, the last season. I know she gets real big and sort of has her own empire going on, and I know that much. But so here's what we know about this reboot. So first of all, Mary Louise Parker is signed on. She is in. She's going to executive produce and star in the show. I don't think you could do Weeds without her, personally. She basically, I mean, yeah, the supporting cast was good, but like she was basically the show. So it's going to be on, I don't know. It's going to come from Lionsgate Television, which doesn't have its own network, so they're basically going to shop it around the networks. Will it be on Showtime? I don't know. But Starz, or Lionsgate owns Starz, so it may go to Starz instead of Showtime. I don't know. But they're the ones developing it anyway. Whether they, sell it to Showtime, I don't know. But basically, it's going to pick up about 10 years after the finale, which it ran from 2005 to 2012. So will be actually probably about 8 years after the finale if it airs in 2020. But it's going to be 10 years, storyline-wise, after the finale. And marijuana, obviously, is now legal in several states. So how does that affect things with her, and what has she been up to in the meantime? If this goes to series, I would love to finish, and probably go back and start Weeds, and maybe do some reviews of that on the channel here, because I think it's a show that people are still fond of, and they're also, interestingly, going to take Weeds to syndication this year, or this coming fall, so in 2020. And that will be interesting. I mean, obviously they'll have to clean it up a little bit, but I mean, they did Sex and the City in syndication, they did Curb Your Enthusiasm in syndication, so they can easily do that with Weeds too. And I think that'll be cool. It will maybe open up the Botwins to a whole new audience, maybe. I don't know. So I think that's interesting. We'll see how it plays out. Very interested to hear about that one. The second one is a show that I've never seen, but I've always been interested in, and I've always heard a lot of cool things about, and that is Gossip Girl. We've gone so far now with the reboots that we're rebooting things that have only been off the air a few years. But our good buddy Kristen Bell is going to be back as the narrator. She narrated every episode of the original, which I think it says in the article here how many episodes, but like over 100 episodes. It ran for like 5 or 6 years. But Yeah, so basically it's going to land on HBO Max, which is, and that's what, a lot of these streaming services are doing that now. Like Justin and I talked last week about Apple Plus, and they did a Ghost Rider reboot. And some of the other reboots we've been sort of discussing, like NBC's Peacock app is going to have the Saved by the Bell reboot and a Punky Brewster reboot. And so I think it's a lot of like branding. Not that HBO necessarily needs branding because it has, a ton of shows, but to have something like, hey, maybe you don't like Game of Thrones, or maybe you don't like Curb or Veep, but hey, did you like Gossip Girl? Because we've got the new Gossip Girl. I don't know. So here's what we know about that. There's going to be a 10-episode order, and it has gone straight to series. Like it is happening. Like Weeds is just sort of like, they're going to maybe do it, they're going to shop it around, but this is like, yes, we're doing it. 10 episodes of Gossip Girl, premiering next year on HBO Max. And this is another one that just ended in 2012, so we're only about 7 years away from that. They haven't released anything about who will be starring in it, except for that Kristen Bell will be back doing the narration. But it's going to be, I guess, a whole new bunch of kids, because here's the synopsis. 8 years after the original website went dark, which I don't really know what that means because I didn't watch the show, but alright, a new generation of New York private school teens are introduced to the social surveillance of Gossip Girl, and the Prestige series will address how much social media and the landscape of New York has changed in the intervening years. So, here you go. I think this is a show that I have always wanted to watch. I actually have the whole series. I got it on like a Black Friday deal pretty cheap, and I've always wanted to watch it, and just one of those things I never got around to, So HBO Max is already going to have over 10,000 hours of content, which is both from HBO shows, past and present, and then other properties. Like they're going to be the exclusive streamer for Big Bang Theory. They're going to have some Warner TV stuff, including Friends, I guess, which is odd. That's not going to Peacock, but of course Peacock's going to get The Office. So, but it's also going to include things like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was a Warner Brothers show, so it's going to have that. It's not going to have every Warner Brothers show, but some of the real popular ones. But then here's the other thing. It's also, because it's Warner owned and like HBO and all this, it's also going to have shows from TNT, TBS, Cartoon Network, Adult Swim. So, I mean, there's going to be a lot of stuff. I've never subscribed to HBO in my life, but honestly, the more I hear about HBO Max, like, I don't know, I might do it. We'll see. But anyway, so that's all we really know about that so far with Gossip Girl. But thought it was interesting. People love that show. So the next one is an Equalizer reboot. Now we're delving back a little more into the 80s here, but this is going to be not an original cast kind of thing. It is I guess it's still called a reboot, right? But it's going to be Queen Latifah at the helm this time. Now, we've seen the show turn into two popular movies with Denzel Washington. One was very good, one was terrible. So now Queen Latifah is going to be on it, and it's probably going to be on CBS, which makes sense. They're the home now of the Hawaii Five-0 reboot, Magnum P.I., MacGyver. They did sell the Walker Texas Ranger reboot to the CW, but CBS owns that, so it's all still sort of in the mix. But we don't really know too much about it, except that it's basically going to be the same exact premise as the original, kind of like Magnum and MacGyver have been. Latifah's going to play, a woman using her extensive skills to help people with nowhere else to turn. So we'll see what happens with that. They're just doing a pilot of that right now and sort of figuring out if it's going to belong on the schedule. But I don't know. Sounds like a home run for CBS to me, with everything else going on. And then the other thing is Revenge, which I never watched this show, to be honest, but it's weird because it's like one of those things that seems like I would love. Like seems like in that Desperate Housewives type vein. And ABC has had a lot of hits lately, obviously, with the female-centric shows, including all the Shonda Rhimes stuff, Scandal and How to Get Away with Murder and Grey's. But they're prepping a sequel here to Revenge, which again I never saw, but this one just ended a couple of years ago. It's from 2011 to 2015 it ran, and it's going to sort of change gears a little bit from its original makeup, I guess, and go with a more Latina lead character. And it's in the very early stages of development. I've got that about it, but basically, the head of ABC programming has been talking a lot lately about more female-centric shows, that they have been, this is very on brand for us. And she said an interesting thing about it. We'll continue to lean into the female-forward but not male-repellent character dramas. And that's one thing I've always liked about Desperate Housewives, is that it was female-centric, but it never necessarily made the husbands like boobs or anything. Like, sometimes they were a little bit jerky, to move the plot forward, but it was never like, let's, make fun of the guys, and I don't know. So, not usually anyway. Obviously, all of the characters sort of got made fun of, throughout the show. But, so I don't know. Will I watch this? I guess I'll probably watch an episode or two for this show. But will I, unlike Gossip Girl or Weeds, I'm not going to go back and watch the 4 years of Revenge that I missed. But I did hear that it was like a fun show in the same vein as Desperate Housewives, so I'm sure it would fit right in. But, alright, well, we have 6 shows to review, so that's it for the news. But I did want to tell you about all of those reboots, because I thought it was some interesting stuff. So let's move now into the review portion of the show. We've got 6 things to track, and we're going to start off, like we did a couple weeks ago, with something from HBO. A couple weeks ago it was The Watchmen, which is obviously a very high-profile show. This one isn't quite as high-profile, but it caught my eye because I love Kathryn Hahn. She is the star of it. We've seen her in so many movies over the last, 10 years or so, and she always pops up, and it's always great. So basically, this is being hailed as a mini-series, and I never know what to think of that these days, because if a miniseries does incredibly well in the ratings, it becomes a show, like Downton Abbey, and some other things. So, will we see more of this show after this season? I don't know. But for now, it's being hailed as a miniseries. I don't know the exact number of episodes. They've aired 2 or 3, I guess, so far, because there was one on tonight. But essentially, it's a story about this single mother, Eve Fletcher, played by Kathryn Hahn, whose son in the pilot goes away to college, and basically she's going through her own sort of midlife crisis thing. She doesn't know what to do with herself. She's got empty nest syndrome, and I only watched the first episode, so I can only grade it based on that. But it seems to be a clear character study for Kathryn Hahn's character, which is great. I think. She a lot of times is sort of just like the comedic sidekick or whatever. I would say her highest profile role was probably in Bad Moms. But we've seen her in so many things, including like This Is Where I Leave You, Bad Words. I think she was in Our Idiot Brother. Yes, she was with Paul Rudd. So she's shown up in a lot of these like R-rated comedies. So I'm intrigued to see where they take this character. I think the first episode is really like, the end of it is her dropping him off at college, and then she ends up like taking a bath at the end, just kind of relaxing. But the whole episode is focused so much on the son, because he has been her whole life. And so I think that's what's intriguing about it, is that they're really going to, I think, focus now on her and sort of keep the son, around and have him, be part of the show here and there. But I think it's mostly going to be her trying to figure herself out. She's joining, she's going to school as well. And, she's got some sexual stuff going on. She wants to feel sexual again, since she's been divorced and all this, and since her life has been taking care of the son. And, the son is sort of developing his own sexual identity. One of the neighbor girls or whoever comes over, as they're supposed to be leaving for college, and she, has sex with the kid and whatever, and so there's a lot of pieces at play here, but at its heart, it is a really interesting character study. I really enjoyed it, at least the pilot, and when I hear miniseries that's not on like Netflix or something, I think usually about like 6 episodes is kind of the max. So this may be only a 6 episode show, and it's only a half hour. It's a quick watch, which I also didn't realize. HBO has so few half hour shows anymore, and I didn't realize it was like kind of a comedy. Like me not looking at movie previews, I try not to know too much about a show before I go into it because I just want to sort of immerse myself in the story that the filmmaker wants to tell, not that the promotional and marketing team want to tell. So all I knew about it was that Catherine Hahn was in it. So I was like, all right, cool. I like her. It was very interesting to me. I really enjoyed it. And one other thing that's interesting about it is one of the last projects of Cameron Boyce. He plays her son's roommate at college, who we meet briefly in this episode, but probably appears in others. And he's that kid that died earlier this year in his early 20s, like the Disney star. He was in the Descendants movies, and he also did like the Adam Sandler Grown Ups movies. So this is going to be one of his last things too. So if you're a fan of his, I think it might be of some interest as well in that respect. But I really enjoyed it. I think Catherine Hahn gave a great performance in this episode. I'm excited to see more, and I leave Mrs. Fletcher with a B+. So up next is Modern Love. I'm kind of rifling through these this week. I don't want to take too much time just because there's so much to review, so we'll try to get through these a little quicker than most weeks. But so Modern Love is on. Is it on Amazon? Yes, this is on Amazon Prime Video, and it's got a huge cast pedigree, but it's an anthology, so there's only 2, 3, 4 of them in an episode at a time. But people like Anne Hathaway and Tina Fey, and who else? Andy Garcia and I don't know, Dev Patel. He was in one of the ones I saw. Judd Hirsch, Ed Sheeran. So, a very interesting, wide array of cast. And it's based on this New York Times article that was called Modern Love. It was like a weekly column that I don't know if it's still in print now, but it was for a while, I guess. And so Amazon's already renewed it for a second season. So I guess the first week they had a good enough rating from it or whatever that they renewed it for a second season. Here's my take on it. First of all, when I heard the concept, I thought, well, that's incredibly like the Netflix show called Love that just wrapped up, and I think that ran 3 seasons, but that had maybe not as many A-listers, but it had a lot of names that I mean, it had Mark Maron and Dave Franco and some people like that, and same sort of concept in an anthology. So every episode sort of focused on different characters, and they were able to have I think the first season or 2 maybe was the same, like each team of characters or whatever got 2 episodes, or maybe I just watched them all at once and so it felt like that, but I don't think that's true. I think they each got a couple of episodes. But we followed these same characters season by season. I don't know if Modern Love will do the same. I don't think so, because the way it's structured doesn't seem to lend itself to knowing more. It seems to be like from start to finish of the relationship. And I actually gave this one the old college try, because anthology series are so odd in that, like Mrs. Fletcher, for example, that, okay, well, these next 5 episodes are going to focus more on Mrs. Fletcher and her relationship with her son. But anthologies, it's like you get what you get, and every episode's completely different, both in actors and sometimes in tone, and sometimes, the writers are different. And so it's sort of a crapshoot. So I watched the first 2 and quite honestly was unimpressed. and I saw that Tina Fey was going to be in one, so I skipped ahead to her episode, which is episode 4. It's her and John Slattery. And it was the best one of the 3 that I watched, but still not that good. So here's basically my issue with it. And apparently this is the way the column was like as well. It's basically all set in New York City, so it's like, the stories of New York and whatever kind of love, whether it's, romantic love or platonic love or, even familial love. But like the ones I saw, so the first one was, is it Christina Milioti, who played the mother in How I Met Your Mother in the last season, and she's been in other stuff. But yeah, Kristen Milioti is this woman who goes out with this guy that she really kind of likes but doesn't know, and then he turns into a douche, but then she gets pregnant from him. And the crux of that story is she's got this very platonic relationship with her doorman, and she confides in him, and he didn't like the guy from the start, and this and that. So the whole episode is sort of based on their relationship. And then, but again, like, it goes from start to finish. Like, it goes from her meeting the guy to getting pregnant to having the baby to then moving away and then bringing back the kid when she's 8 to, like, meet the doorman and, like, all this stuff. So then the second episode was sort of almost like 2 stories in one. It was like Dev Patel, and it was also Catherine Keener, but they weren't together. Like, they each had their own love stories that they were sort of telling to each other, in the park. And then the Tina Fey John Slattery one was like, this couple who is basically dead. They're just, the relationship is dying, and they're in couples therapy, and they've got this routine, but they kind of don't like each other and whatever. So, 3 obviously different, takes on love, and that's fine. But it all seemed, first of all, very hollow. Like, when I watched Love on Netflix, even when I had first been introduced to the characters, they seemed like, pretty formed characters and interesting, and I enjoyed, seeing what was up with them and what they, what their story was about. This goes from, beginning to end so fast that it's like, especially with that first one with Kristen Milioti, like, it's just, you don't get the sense of, like, who these characters are. Like, okay, cool, she's buddies with her doorman, but they don't explore really anything of that. Like, they didn't, explore how that happened, or if the doorman had any feelings for her other than, maybe paternal ones or whatever. And then everything's just such a rush job. I don't know. I felt like, and I felt the same way with episode 2. Episode 2, I kind of felt, okay, so in a half hour now, we're now focusing on 2 different love stories for people that we don't know and are never going to meet again. It's like, I don't know. I found it to be very disappointing based on the caliber of stars that were drawn to this project. And even the Tina Fey one, which was, like I said, the best of the bunch, it still just all felt very hollow. Like, these characters were not well written, and I don't know how well they can be written in a newspaper column. But obviously, if these stories are adapted directly from those columns, they can inject a little more, oomph into them. You got a half hour to work with. I didn't think the writing was that good. I mean, the acting for the most part was pretty good. And I don't know. It's not like I was necessarily, like, I was interested enough in some of the people, but there wasn't enough there to keep me going. Like if this were the same characters in a season, I would definitely not watch it. Might I try some more of these episodes? I don't know. I mean, I might watch the one with Anne Hathaway, but I really didn't think much of it, to be honest. It was okay. It was, the acting was good, and I mean, the New York setting was nice, but I really thought they dropped the ball, especially when compared with Love on Netflix, which how can you not? They're almost called the same thing even. Modern Love and Love, they're both streaming um, services, but I did not care for this. Like if I had to grade Love, it's probably more in that like B plus kind of range, even A minus, maybe depending on the group or the episodes. And that's the other thing. It's like the other 7 episodes of this. I think there's 10 total. The other 7 episodes of this could be amazing. They could be great, but like I probably won't watch them, so I won't know. There's 8 episodes total, so I saw almost half. I saw 3 of them, so the other 5 might be great. I don't know. I leave Modern Love with a C minus, very very below average. So up next is a show called Treadstone. And if that sounds familiar, it might be because you are a fan of the Bourne series. It is sort of part of the Jason Bourne world, sort of based on the books and then of course the movies. It's a prequel. It takes place mainly in the 70s with some flash forwards to the present. But Treadstone is essentially the organization that creates the Jason Bournes, as it were. So it's like basically the origin story of the whole fictional world of Jason Bourne, and it starts in 1973, and the lead is Jeremy Irvine, who I am not familiar with. He plays one of the program's agents who basically escapes the Soviets in the first episode, and then has to figure out what's going on when he's activated as one of the Bourne types, and I don't know if he'll actually be a Jason Bourne or if he'll just be sort of his own thing, but it was developed for television by Tim Kring, who did Heroes, and he's got a pretty good pedigree with this stuff, and this is an interesting one because I hadn't heard much about it. I haven't watched anything on USA in a long time. Like I said earlier, I'm a cord cutter. I haven't even had USA for years, but the last thing I watched on there was the sitcom Playing House with Lennon Parham and Jessica St. Clair, and that's been a few years since that was on. But in terms of like their hour-long dramas or action shows, I haven't really watched many. I saw Burn Notice a little bit back in the day, but like I don't watch Suits. I've seen some Monk episodes, but I heard about this. I thought, all right, well, I do like the Jason Bourne movies. I'll check it out and see how it goes. And ratings wise, it's doing okay for something on basic cable. It gets about 500,000 views, a little more, in its like live airing, and then when you add in the next 3-day viewings on DVRs and stuff like that, it jumps almost triple, and it has like close to 2 million views. So it's a show that might get some people talking. I don't know. I thought it was okay. Here's what I liked about it. I thought the action scenes were incredibly well choreographed. I thought they were pretty well shot as well. I don't know who directed the pilot, but Tim Kring wrote the darn thing too. But directed by Raman Bahrani. I don't know who that is, or Bahraini. But apparently, I don't know. He's a filmmaker, like a film director, so not much with TV, I suppose. But he did this. But I can that makes a lot of sense actually, knowing that, because I mean the fight scenes are shot very well, so that's not surprising. And the acting is okay. It's a show on USA, so I'm not expecting Dame Judi Dench here. I'm expecting average basic cable acting. So it fits that bill. But just narratively, it just does not really come together. There's not a good balance between action and story, and then the story that is there is sort of muddled and confusing. And even if you don't, if you don't know anything about Jason Bourne, I don't think it really matters. At least in this pilot episode, because they're so far removed right now in the plot from the Bourne stuff. But if you do know about it, I guess it's mildly interesting to see, okay, well, this is how it began. But you certainly don't need to see the Bourne movies. Like, I don't think you'll be lost either way. But I think you might be lost just because narratively it's not all that put together. So, it's all right. But in the interest of time, we can move on from Treadstone. I give it a C plus. But I'm glad to hear that it's doing well in the ratings. I I'm a big ratings follower, and it bums me out that like most shows on like Netflix or other streaming services we don't really hear about what the ratings are, because I've always been a big ratings follower. So I was happy to see that Treadstone is almost tripling its performance, in that first few days of DVR watching. So up next is a show called Looking for Alaska. This is another streamer. This one is on Hulu, and it caught my eye because it comes from a John Green novel. And both Fault in Our Stars and Paper Towns I thought were very good movies. I think I gave them both like in that B range, B, maybe even B plus range. So all right, John Green is a name I'm familiar with in young adult drama. Sure, like I'll give it a go. And basically, this is an older novel from him, 2005. So it's been kicking a while. So it got an 8 episode series on or season, I should say, on Hulu, and essentially, it takes place in 2005, which the writers and producers have a lot of fun with that era. There's a lot of like music from the time period, and like White Stripes, Blue Orchid, and like just I don't know, stuff that I was definitely bopping out to 15 years ago. And essentially, the lead character is played by Charlie Plummer, who I'm not super familiar with. He has done stuff in like Boardwalk Empire, like just stuff I just never watched or kept up with. So I don't really know him from too many things. He was on like a Person of Interest episode. He did play, okay, if you saw All the Money in the World, he played John Paul Getty III, which I did see. Excellent movie. So you might know him from that if you watch that. But he's not in that much. But he's the lead here, and his name's Miles Halter, who they call Pudge. And basically it takes place at a camp, but it's like an academy. Culver Creek Academy, it's called. I think of it as a camp because they live in like sort of cabins and like whatever. But I have to say this is one of my favorite shows of the year so far. Like I've reviewed a lot of shows thus far for news and reviews. This is one of my favorites. I'm a sucker kind of for the the coming of age stories. Some of my favorite movies of the last decade have been like Mud and Perks of Being a Wallflower, and just all these really cool coming of age things. And this is something that I don't know, that when it works so well, and I think it does here. Now, again, I only watched the first episode of this, but like speaking of names, okay, so John Green, sort of led me to this show because I like, his other. I don't read his books, but I like his other movies that they've done based on his books. Modern Love, I sort of thought the same thing because it was John Carney who, was from like Once and Begin Again and Sing Street, my #1 movie that year that came out. I think that was 2016 maybe. I love Sing Street, so I was like, that was one other thing that got me excited about Modern Love, and then it was a big disappointment. This one here does not disappoint, and so I was very happy to see that. Basically, it's this kid sort of comes to this place from Orlando, and he doesn't really know anybody, but his roommate kind of makes friends with him right away, known as the Colonel, and he nicknames him Pudge because he's so skinny, and it's like an ironic nickname. And then there's the girl that he's sort of into, and how is the dynamic going to go? They meet these bullies. It all sounds on the surface, I know, it all sounds very like run of the mill, like okay, but trust me, the acting is great, the writing is great, and one of my favorite things about coming of age dramas when they're good is the authenticity. I really believed this was going on, and what's funny is 2005 was, I think, the very year I got involved with being an advisor at the YMCA Teen Leaders Club near me, and so even though I wasn't a teenager in 2005, I was working with them a lot, and I can sort of identify in these kids in the show people that I knew from Teen Leaders. I was like, okay, yep, that is exactly how so and so acted. So I think the writing here is really sharp, and it's definitely got some funny moments, but some drama for sure, some maybe romance. I mean, it is John Green, so I'm sure there's going to be some romance. But I thought it was very enjoyable. I hope this gets. Well, I don't know if I hope it gets a second season. I don't, because if there's only one book, I don't know if I want them to screw it up like that. But again, is this a limited run? Let me look here. Okay, so it does say miniseries. Okay, so there's that word again, miniseries. So is it? I don't know. But there's 8 of them. They're all an hour. So if it is a miniseries, then you can be done in 8 hours and cool. I'm always weary when I hear miniseries, but honestly, so far this season, some of my favorite shows have been of the miniseries variety, because you had Unbelievable on Netflix, which is basically a one and done kind of thing, and then Mrs. Fletcher I gave a high grade to, which apparently is going to be a miniseries, and then this one probably a miniseries since it's only based on one book. That makes sense. But I really enjoyed this, and I think the kid that is the lead here, the actor Charlie Plummer, he's so good, just in his I don't know, his portrayal of the emotions and the sort of fish out of water thing, and really really good. I give Looking for Alaska an A-. Highly recommended. So the last two are sort of similar in the vein that actually they're very similar, I should say, but in the vein that they're both from streaming services and they're both about zombies. One of them is on Netflix. That is called Daybreak. The other one is on Hulu, but is an import from the UK, so it wasn't directly designed for Hulu, but it's on there for us in the US, and that's called Zomboat. And it makes sense. We just came from Halloween, so it makes sense that at the last week of October they're going to release all these shows about zombies. So Daybreak has how many episodes? 10. And the time on these are weird. Like, they're all about 45 minutes, 50 minutes. So I guess if it was on real television, it would be an hour-long show, when you add in the commercials. But it doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't act like an hour-long show, because it's certainly trying to be comedic. And I think successfully so. I shouldn't have said trying to be comedic. That was that was kind of rude. No, it succeeds. It's comedic, and it's good. And then the other one, Zomboat, as they love in the UK, is only 6 episodes. They're all half hours, and really 22 minutes, 23 minutes. So I watched the first episode and a half of that. I was trying to get through the second episode, and my Hulu kept crashing, so I just said, all right, well, forget it. So I don't know. I guess we'll take them one at a time. But Daybreak essentially is, I am sort of referring to it as Ferris Bueller meets the zombies, because the star, Colin Ford, is a purposefully Ferris Bueller type. Breaks the fourth wall all the time with the camera. There were several references to Ferris Bueller just in the pilot episode. First of all, Matthew Broderick plays the principal in flashbacks, so right there, okay, Ferris Bueller connection, cool. But then, they also do the whole so-and-so saw so-and-so, said that so-and-so was at this place, kind of like they did in Ferris Bueller. Also, in the opening scene of this show, they're doing roll call, and so they're calling all the, was it Jadens? They're calling all the Jadens, the teacher is, and then she gets to this kid who is Josh, and his last name's Wheeler, and she goes, Josh Wheeler. No response, so she goes, Wheeler? So obviously that is a Ferris Bueller reference. So it's clearly tongue-in-cheek in that way. It knows it is. I love that they got Matthew Broderick for the principal. I don't think it would have worked otherwise. It would have just been like, oh, this is just a Ferris Bueller ripoff. But since they got Matthew Broderick in it, it's kind of like, okay, now we're all in on the joke together, including, Ferris himself, Matthew Broderick. So I liked that part about it. But basically, um, it's told via flashbacks, but also a lot of stuff in the present day. So the flashbacks are basically when he first gets to this school. It's actually not that different, I guess, from looking for Alaska, because he's brand new to this school, doesn't know anybody, and is trying to make friends. But he's sort of like a loner. So, he has a small group of friends. There's this girl that he really likes named Sam, and, a couple of friends. But for the most part, it's sort of, he's by himself, and it's him and his mom that live in this apartment, but they never really see each other because she works all the time, so she leaves him like little post-it notes everywhere. And then we sort of get fully entrenched pretty early on into the zombie thing. And then we see like how he was back in school and then how he is now. It sort of also reminds me a lot. Now, I haven't seen the second movie yet, but it reminds me a lot of Zombieland, too. Zombieland also, because like I said, I haven't seen the second movie yet. But it reminds me of the first Zombieland movie anyway, with just sort of like its depiction of zombies, its depiction of the rules kind of thing. They don't expressly say that here, but, he's going back into his mind to think about, okay, well, this person said, this about, whoever. Oh, and he's a zombie now. Here's how I can attack him based on the knowledge I have. So it's like, it's kind of a flashback based on necessity. Like, okay, we need information about this character. Let's do a flashback. The lead actor is very likable. He is a very good, like, Ferris Bueller knockoff. And even the poster is just like him, like lounging out, kind of like Ferris Bueller did in the one poster. So it's like, it's so very tongue-in-cheek. Now, is it too much? Maybe a little bit. Maybe it's a little too on the nose sometimes. My guess is that in the course of 10 episodes, they will dial back the Ferris Bueller references. But I think the depiction of the zombies is familiar, but still fun. It also reminds me of that movie Warm Bodies a little bit too, just in their depiction of like, meeting with the zombies and like the interactions with the zombies. But here he's telling us that there's still different cliques, and here's where here's where this region of zombies is, and here's where this. So I thought it was funny. I was engaged in it for sure. I think the lead actor is very likable, and I really enjoyed it. I will definitely stick with this one. I hope for a second season if it gets good, or gets even better, I should say. So I leave Daybreak with a B+. So that's Zombie Show 1. Zombie Show 2 is a little bit harder to pin down, and it is Zomboat. And essentially it's, it's another zombie story. It's also rather tongue-in-cheek, but basically it takes place in Birmingham, and these two sisters who are very different, let's say. One's, addicted to her shooter video games, and the other one, thinks that's really stupid, and so they sort of, she's maybe more, on the academic tip. So they're, like, on the run from these zombies, and she's also, the other sister's kind of, like, a little slutty, so they are, figuring out what to do. They steal this boat. They realize there's these other two guys living in the boat that are also trying to hide from the zombies. So now the four of them are together. And that's sort of where the first episode leaves off. So, like I said, I did watch like 2/3 of the second episode. And it's more of the same. I mean, if you like British humor, it's definitely like, it's definitely got a British vibe to it. It's also, pretty tongue-in-cheek, just like Daybreak is, but it's a little bit more reference-heavy. They keep referencing, like, Walking Dead and Did they reference Zombieland specifically? I don't know, but definitely a few different Walking Dead references. And then they talk about Call of Duty and her, video game attacks and that kind of thing. And I enjoy the banter and the back and forth, of especially the two sisters with each other and the two sisters with the guys. The guys are okay. They're pretty generic. We see their sort of side of the story at the beginning, or I guess in the middle of the first episode, where they're at like a bus terminal or train station or something, and they realize that there's zombies, and what do we do? But they're also sort of having like a little fight, crisis of friendship type thing. So like they have to deal with that. They're kind of generic. I could take them or leave them. They could be basically anybody. Like they're not that fleshed out. No pun intended. But I think the girls are really fun. I think their camaraderie is really good. Who are they played by? Because they're people I do not recognize. That's for sure. Leah. Let me see here. There's no Wikipedia page for this show, by the way, so I had to really do my research. Leah Brotherhead and Cara Theobald are the sisters, and I think they're very funny, and they've got definitely like a sisterly vibe. Like, I don't know if they worked together before on other shows or whatever, but, or just they knew each other, but they definitely seem they have that sort of sister fighting thing, but like, I got your back. So I think their camaraderie is really good. I don't think the show is as well written as Daybreak. I think it's a little bit lazier. I think it relies a little bit more on the tropes of zombies. Daybreak relies, I think, more on the tropes of high school, and zombies are included, like thrown into the mix. But I think this relies more heavily just on zombie tropes in general that we've seen a lot, and the fact that they're pointing some of them out by saying like, in The Walking Dead, Glenn should have, whatever. I don't know. That might get tired. It's only 6 episodes that are a half hour each, minus commercials. They're 22 minutes each, whatever. So, okay, it probably doesn't get too stale. But of the two, I definitely enjoyed Daybreak more. I'll finish Zomboat. I mean, it's not going to take long, and I do like the two lead female characters. But on the whole, it's just sort of okay for me. So I leave Zomboat with a B minus. So that is going to do it. We got them in. We got 6 reviews and 5 news items in just a little over an hour. So that's awesome. Next week will be the Disney Plus episode. We're going to talk about... I'm going to watch as much of Disney Plus as I can. I think at the start there's only like 4 or 5 shows. So it won't, it won't be... Like Apple Plus, we did, I think, 7 shows Justin and I reviewed. So it won't be... But Apple Plus had to do that because it's all their original content. There's no catalog stuff for them. Disney Plus has the catalog of like literally... a couple thousand movies, that they're going to put up on the site, and not to mention a lot of old TV shows too. So they don't really need that much original content right out of the gate. More sprinkle it in, but I know there's the High School Musical thing, there's the Mandalorian, there's a Jeff Goldblum like advice show or something, and then there's something with Forky from Toy Story. That's like a short form show. I think it's probably like, I don't know, 8 minutes or something. Probably kind of like the Snoopy show was for Apple TV. But that's going to do it. Thanks so much for watching. We've got a new episode of The Connors this week. We might have a Frasier Friday up on Friday. I'm not sure. But anyway, tons of stuff always on the channel. I've been putting up like 3 to 4 videos a week for the last month. So love your feedback. Love your comments. But that's going to do it. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.